Welcome to Now We're Getting Somewhere. I'm Katie, and I'm a certified life coach, but I've also been a management consultant at McKinsey and a product manager at a tech startup. In other words, I know what it feels like to have a life that looks pretty good on paper, but doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I help my professional clients develop lives that are more meaningful, happy, and also more successful. And I want to share the same practical insights with you. Let's go. Hello, everybody. I am recording this podcast at night, which I don't usually do, but it's just been a little busy recently. One of my kids has had a fever for 4 days, and poor guy, I think he's just been uncomfortable. And also I have been uncomfortable because there's certain elements of your child being sick, let's be honest, that can get a little gross and take time. And there's a way in which coming to talk to you about deep and meaningful topics feels like a really beautiful break from all of that. And my house is quiet and I'm sitting cross-legged and my laptop is on the ottoman and I'm on the floor, and it just feels really cozy to be with you. So I hope that you're receiving that from me wherever you're listening to this. Maybe you're cross-legged on your floor with your podcast player of choice on your ottoman or wherever I'm finding you in this world. Okay, let us get to today's topic. As many of you know, thinking about making decisions and knowing what you want has been on my mind because I am opening my How to Know What You Want course for enrollment soon. I'm going to open it for enrollment twice this year. So it's like special that I'm opening it. And as part of that, I'm doing a really fun free training next week. It's called Make the Career or Life Decision You've Been Avoiding, even if you've been thinking about it for years. It's totally free. It's a really cool chance to hop on Zoom with me live, which is something I don't do a lot or really ever, see some live teaching, do some live Q&A if you're interested in that. And the link to sign up for that is in the show notes if you would like to join us. But as I said, I have been thinking a lot about making decisions and how to know what you want because, all that is coming up. And in particular, I recorded a podcast, I think 2 podcasts ago. I think it was number 71 about past decision trauma. And somewhere in there, I mentioned that it's so helpful to not say to yourself, I can't trust myself because I made a mistake in the past. And now I just need to constantly doubt myself and ask my mom and my friends what they think I should do. It's much more helpful to say to yourself, I want to make decisions differently in the future. And here is my developmental growth area. Or I want to make decisions differently in the future. And here are my 3 developmental growth areas. Because when we say, I'm just bad at making decisions, or I can't trust myself because I made a mistake in the past, I feel my body close down. My posture wants to slouch and hide a bit. And of course, when we feel all that way, we're going to find ourselves either procrastinating decisions or super overthinking them or just making them anyway, but feeling anxious and not very confident. So when we think on the flip side, what are my developmental opportunities? We begin to get resourceful. We can begin to feel hopeful. We begin to look for new ways to be in the world. And all of that is just going to lead to better outcomes. But given that I've said that, I think a really obvious, natural question is going to be, how do we identify what our next developmental opportunities are? And of course, my favorite way to do that would be to work with you in some capacity. You could be my one-on-one client, or you could join How to Know What You Want. And by both using my really straightforward step-by-step curriculum and getting one-on-one coaching from me if you want it, in a group context, you and I can identify what those development opportunities are. But I also just wanted to put something out into the world that was totally free and be of service on this really important question, even if you never pay me or work with me in any capacity. I think in my last podcast where I talked about this concept of developmental opportunities, I mentioned in passing, like maybe 3 really, really quick things that a person might do. And in the week since, I keep thinking to myself, like, there's also this developmental opportunity. Then there's this one and that one too. And my list was getting kind of epic. So I decided that I should put all of it into a podcast. I came up with at least 9. Actually, there's even more, certainly more in my How to Know What You Want course, but I decided to cut myself off at 9 so we wouldn't be here all day. So today I wanted to share those 9 juicy developmental opportunities. I'm going to share all 9, and then I'm going to talk very briefly about what to do once you've identified your developmental opportunity, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, so the first potential developmental opportunity I would offer you is, please stop saying I'm bad at making decisions, and ideally, please start identifying actual developmental opportunities. That could be a development opportunity for you. And you've probably already guessed at that one, right? But it's very important because, again, each time you say I'm bad at making decisions, you will find yourself to be worse at making decisions. And that's not magic. You're not enacting a curse upon yourself. But of course, when you believe that you're bad at making decisions, you start acting like you're bad at making decisions. It shuts down your resourcefulness. And hopefully, even from this podcast, you'll have ideas for how to, very concretely improve your decision-making skills. But even if you just start saying to yourself, I'd like to be more skillful at making decisions, I'm trying to figure out where my developmental opportunities are, that is so much better. I'm going to say that one again. Even if you just start saying, I'd like to get better at making decisions, and I'm trying to figure out what my developmental opportunities are, so much better. Even those statements have so much more room to maneuver. I feel that in my body. When I say things like that, I feel curious. I feel open. When I say I'm trying to figure out how I can make decisions differently in the future, I begin to wonder. I begin to get curious. I begin to find things out. So that's my number one suggestion for developmental opportunity. As I say, I'll say it again. Stop saying I'm bad at making decisions, and ideally start identifying actual developmental opportunities. Even if it's just, I'm trying to figure out what my decision-making developmental opportunities are. So that's number one. The second potential developmental opportunity I'd present to you is get more skillful at spending quality time on decision-making. I'll say it again. Get more skillful at spending quality time on decision-making. I have a whole podcast on this fairly recently. I think it's episode 67, so just a few episodes back. If this is your developmental opportunity and you want a bit more insight on it. But so many people think they're spending quality time with the topic because it's sort of like on their mind a lot, but they're not. They're just ruminating on it, or they're feeling very anxious about it very frequently. But that is not quality time. Quality time is when they are intentionally on purpose thinking about their topic with their whole mind and whole body. And I want to say here, it's not that letting perhaps your subconscious process something in the background has no value. Of course it does. But if you're not making progress, you still need quality time. I was just talking to a one-on-one client about this for her question, which has to do with career shifts, probably mostly career shift, but also that career shift would have some pretty big implications in some other areas of her life, like where her family lives and finances and some other things. She's definitely spending quality time on it when we're meeting together, but she's not really spending quality time on it when we're not in session together. And as a result, she's not making progress as quickly as she'd like. And at some point I was like, girl, if you want to make progress, your number one developmental opportunity is quality time. Frequent low-level anxiety or back-of-the-mind rumination is not the same thing as quality time. And she needs some quality time in order to really move the ball down the field. And actually, she has a second developmental opportunity, which is the third thing I'm about to tell you, another super, super common thing that many people need and you, listener, may need. The third potential developmental opportunity for all of you out in this world is you may need to become more skillful at effective and frequent fear reduction. You may need to get more skillful at effective and frequent fear reduction. For so many of us, the actual thing that is stopping us from knowing what we want is that we are lost in a hurricane of fear. Fear is an ocean of messy waves, and we can't see up from down, and we've got water in our nose, and we're so tossed around that there's no hope of knowing what we want. And frankly, this comes as a surprise to many, many people. Many people think that they need more options or they need a fancy new tool or a fancy new strategy. And of course, sometimes we do need all of that. And I have all those things in How to Know What You Want course. But very, very often, what we actually need to do is to take full responsibility for quieting that choppy ocean. And once we do that, and once we are capable of seeing up from down and we don't have water going up our nostrils, it's actually not so wildly difficult to figure out which direction to swim in. Of course, we're never going to entirely quiet the ocean forever. We are humans, and if it's a high-stakes decision or even a low-stakes decision, but it matters to you, fear likely will be present, but you have the power to modulate that fear up and down based on your own actions or lack thereof. So please take responsibility. Take responsibility for quieting the waters. You can do it yourself with just more effective strategies for fear reduction and doing them more frequently. And I will say this is one of those areas of How to Know What You Want that many, many people, even just saying you got to do it, but also the strategies told me was most helpful for them. Okay, so how do we do this? You probably already have some strategies that help you reduce your fear. So my first recommendation is just start there. Start with what you already know how to do. If you want even more ideas and How to Know What You Want, one of my 5 steps, it's step 4, is all about fear reduction because, again, it is so important. The teaching there is very tactical and practical. So there's techniques that you can implement that very day. And then I even offer, I think it's over 40 thoughts that you can think in response to a whole host of common fears. If all that's interesting to you, I do a really solid introduction to some of those techniques in my upcoming free training. So that's a great way to get a little taster for free. But those are just some ways to begin. And guys, I am such a depth person. I've only done 3. I can feel within me that I want to give you so much more in each of those 3, but I'm holding myself back because this is an overview kind of episode, right? It's a little taster platter. It's like that appetizer where you get one of each. I am going to make my next ones a little more high level. We'll see if I succeed. So that was number 3. You could become more skillful at frequent and effective fear reduction. The 4th thing that you can do better at decision making is improve your skillfulness at somatic awareness. Somatic, if you've never heard that word before, if you've heard it, but you're like, I don't know what that means, just refers to the body. So somatic awareness is your ability to sense into your body awareness or your body sensations. On a personal level, this was a huge game changer for me. I was a super cognitive oriented person for so much of my life until my kind of early mid-20s. And to be now somebody who is capable, I'm still very, very cognitive, but who also gets a lot of somatic feedback, who can tune into more of a gut instinct, that really has allowed me to have a much more stable, well-prioritized knowing about what's right for me. And of course, I say this whenever I talk about somatic stuff, but somatic stuff always still involves the brain. It's actually not magic. It's not woo-woo. It's just that the brain and body are profoundly linked. We could go into more details about that, but just for those of you out there who may have some skepticism, I want to always name that. This topic, again, is so important. It is step 2 of 5 in my How to Know What You Want course. And because it's so important, I'm also going to be giving a really nice, practical, accessible introduction to it in my free training. So just to give little teasers. But I do want to mention this one because in particular, if you're trying to figure out whether this is your developmental opportunity, I think that some folks come to me who are thinking about the issue that they need to make a decision on a lot. They're putting in the quality time, they're putting in those reps, and they're still turned around. And that's a moment where my treatment plan is going to be that we may need to shift from the cognitive to bringing in some of the more embodied techniques. And honestly, even if you aren't over-identified with your mind in the way that perhaps I was, many, many folks will benefit from somatic awareness. It can be one of the quickest ways to make a more confident decision in my experience. Things that are fast are the best. And the decisions are usually surprisingly accurate. So that's number 4. In terms of development opportunities, you could become more skillful at somatic awareness. You could turn up the volume to your somatic awareness and then learn how to get a signal more quickly. Okay, so that's number 4. Then number 5 of my tips is that when possible, and it's not always possible, but it is often possible. When possible, you can get better at making decisions in the right order. In my How to Know What You Want course, I call this the clarity ladder. So many people are trying to figure out like what their business should sell or what the packaging should be, and they're not even sure if they want to start a business, just to give an example. So you might want to get more skillful at making decisions in the right order. That's all I'm going to say there, because I'm going to make it short. So that's number 5. When possible, you could get more skillful at making decisions in the right order. The 6th potential development opportunity for you is that you could become more skillful at listing out your options. I'm going to say this one again too. You could become more skillful at listing out your options. This one is in some ways too simple, but I find that it's so effective. So often we get kind of swirly because we're just holding too many options in our heads. And our internal navigational equipment is kind of trying to get a read or a response on everything simultaneously. And as a result, we kind of can't get a read on anything. I am thinking as I share this of 2 different one-on-one clients I've had in the past couple of months. One who had really a career shift question, and another one who had 3 different parts of her life that might be changing and lots of options for each of those variables. It was, a big one. And they both benefited it in a huge way from literally writing out each option. And the purpose of writing out each option, just like literally making a list, like putting things in boxes and being like, what are the options here? The purpose of writing out each option wasn't so that they could make some sort of crazy spreadsheet for each of their options or like a complex pro-con list or a weighted Excel file. The point was that something happens when you can sort of physically see your options. If you are, more of a student of mine, you could use the embodied testing methodology that I teach my one-on-one clients and in How to Know What You Want. And you can also just start being able to cross things off. In an iterative way, you will find yourself moving towards rightness. And this is true even if you feel like there's way too many things, like it's too many things to write out. Because clients tell me that. This client that I mentioned who had 3 different variables, I think I really pushed a couple of times and I finally got her. She didn't want to do it at first. She was like, it's too complicated. I finally got her to write everything out. And I think she had like 27 different options. She made me this whole PowerPoint and all the variables that were in play. And that might seem like too many. And it was a lot. It was like a lot of pages. And it was only after she actually wrote out each of them. Like, okay, there's, this is like, variable A, it's this one, then variable B, it's this one, and so on, that she started getting rid of a ton. I think she got rid of like 2/3 of the options by the end of our first conversation about these, once I got her to actually write them all down. So that's another great developmental opportunity for you. Just get more skillful at listing out your options. The Jedi move is not trying to keep them all in your head. So that is number 6. The 7th developmental opportunity I offer to you is to become more skillful at how and when you involve other people. I teach in How to Know What You Want that involving other people too much or without intention is like one of the fastest ways to, I'll say it mildly, fuck up your compass and lose your connection to your inner sense of rightness. So skillfulness here might be about more skillfully protecting your inner navigational equipment or your process. So other people's opinions are not discombobulating you so frequently. But I also teach in my course that there are key points at which involving other people can be really powerful. Other people can be a quite powerful tool for idea generation if used very intentionally and in some specific ways. Or it can actually be a really interesting final choosing tool, but only if you have a strong and skillful enough connection to yourself to like hold yourself and allow your reaction to their opinions to give you more insight. So it's like a little more advanced. But there's a few different ways to do that, but that overall is number 7. You can be more conscious and more skillful about how and when you involve other people. Developmental opportunity number 8 is that you can become more skillful at warming up your compass by making decisions in any part of your life. Become more skillful at warming up your compass by making decisions in any part of your life. I talk in How to Know What You Want about the fact that compasses are momentum machines. once you start making some decisions that have rightness to them, you start making more and more and more. I think there are a few reasons for this, which I discussed in the course, but I think at least one reason is that once you feel what rightness feels like in your body, it's kind of like giving a bloodhound someone's t-shirt to smell. By that I mean, once you know what rightness feels like in one area of your life, even if it's something small, like just buying new pens at Staples, that can be really nice, by the way. Then you start to instinctively recognize rightness or lack thereof in future decisions, because now you remember that embodied footprint and you either feel that relief of rightness. Oh, this is a relief, right? You're like, oh, yes, or the openness of rightness, or however it feels to you. Or then you feel the lack of alignment or the discomfort of the absence of rightness. So that can be one way in, why it becomes this momentum machine. And the second one is that once you've felt rightness, you may start to crave it or want more of it. And it may, that craving may get you over certain humps of fear or hesitation or whatever it is. So we can get very deep into this, but those are at least two ways in which sort of why rightness becomes a virtuous cycle. I will say, I think that people who are skillful in any area know how to warm up their instrument. Whether you are a violinist or a figure skater, you know how to warm things up even when your muscles are cool. And I think to be skillful at decision making, you also need to know how to warm things up even when your muscles are cool. So I think part of being skillful means taking on that growth opportunity. So that's 8. Number 8, you can become more skillful at warming up your compass by making decisions in any part of your life. So that's number 8. Number 9, the 9th potential development opportunity I offer to you is you could become more skillful at knowing when to interact with your compass. I've talked about that a bit here on this podcast already, and I talk about it a lot in How to Know What You Want, but your internal experience is going to be giving you feedback about a big decision, just like all the freaking time. And a lot of that may be fear, just like fear swirling around. And it may point you in all kinds of directions because, again, fear is like this crazy choppy ocean. So part of becoming more skillful here, as I said previously, is becoming more skillful at fear reduction. But another part of it is knowing that if it is a particularly tricky, scary decision, you may not be able to trust all the feedback that you're getting throughout your day. And so you need to be more skillful at, number 1, knowing when you are trustworthy. And that's different for everybody, but it may be at certain times of day, certain times of the week, certain places, alone or with other specific people. And then number 2, saying to yourself, okay, when it's not the trustworthy time, I hear you. And I'm only going to trust output that I'm receiving at trustworthy times. And this isn't one of them. So that is number 9. You could become more skillful at knowing when to interact with your compass. Okay, I am now going to list all of these developmental opportunities again, because you're probably like folding the laundry or taking a walk or driving to work. And I think that repetition, especially auditory repetition, is so useful. So if you want to listen to this whole list and be like, oh yeah, number 5, number 7, whatever it is, that's my developmental opportunity. So listen for it. Here are the 9. Number 1, stop saying I'm bad at making decisions and start ideally identifying actual development opportunities, even if it's just my development opportunity is finding a developmental opportunity. Number 2, you could get more skillful at spending quality time on decision making. Number 3, you could get more skillful at engaging in more frequent and more effective fear reduction. Number 4, you could improve your skillfulness at somatic awareness. Number 5, when possible, you could get better at making decisions in the right order. Number 6, you could get more skillful at listing out your options. Number 7, you could become more skillful about how and when you involve other people. Number 8, you could become more skillful at warming up your compass by making decisions in any part of your life. And number 9, you could become more skillful at knowing when to interact with your compass. Team, there are so many more developmental opportunities I could list. We could also talk about how you could become more skillful at being more energetically frugal, because energy and knowing what we want are so linked. Or you could become more resourceful at coming up with new thoughts, because our thoughts can totally derail us or profoundly support us in just a fraction of a second. And I have a list of 40 plus more useful thoughts in my course in response to all kinds of thoughts that tend to derail people. But I'm going to call it on this list for now because I think even these are so meaty and useful for so many people. And having said all this, I think the next natural question is going to be, how do you work on these developmental opportunities? And the first step, of course, as I've said in 6 different ways on this podcast, is just to name that there is a developmental opportunity. I know that feels like nothing, but it actually is really important. You got to, because by naming it, you can then keep it in the front of your mind when you are making decisions, because you're just going to look for opportunities to practice it. Start with some low stakes decisions and practice it. Also, you could probably get some tips from people who are good at these skills. Maybe you know someone who's really good at reducing the fears in their brain. What do they do? And also, I bet you already have some ideas for things that help you with any given skill. Like maybe you also, let's say you need to reduce the fears in your brain. Maybe you already know some things that help you do it. Are you doing those things on a regular basis? If not, you should start. Take that seriously. And of course, if you'd like to develop more, I would love to have you join my completely free training next week. You can see the sign-up link for that in the show notes, or you can go to katiesiever.com. I'm going to be giving practical tips there for how to put several of these skills into practice. And if you want the big kahuna, my best resource for advice in all of this, or just to raise your hand and have me identify and help you understand how to practice your personal development opportunities, I hope you will join me inside of my How to Know What You Want course. Doors are going to open to the course right after the free training. There actually is a special sign-up bonus for people who are in the free training. So if that's something you want, you could come for just that reason. But either way, you could also just go to my website next week, or I'll be sending emails about it. So look out for that. And above all, please know that I am rooting for you. I was somebody who super struggled to make decisions without pulling the crowd and without doubting myself or asking my mom or making a pro-con list. So if I can grow in all of these ways, I am confident that you can too. I'll be thinking of you. If you really want to change in a meaningful, lasting way, that's when you need a life coach. Every client I've worked with has had incredibly personalized reasons why they're in the tired or anxious or stuck or uninspired state they're in. Working with me can help you identify those roadblocks, which are usually blind spots that you genuinely cannot see, and implement a profoundly customized, doable plan for overcoming them. I have a very small, high-end, one-on-one coaching practice. If you'd like to be my next client, reach out at katiesiever.com. I'd love to meet you.